Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 26th of July, and you're tuned in to Ireland AM.
You are welcome. Coming up this morning, we have got rugby stars, reality queens, and romping romances.
Romping, roll those oars. The girls in green continue their fight for World Cup glories. They take on Canada this afternoon. We've dressed for the part in the studio. We're going to be looking ahead to that match a little later on.
Come on, I'm just feeling good this morning. I'm feeling good about it this morning.
All good vibes today.
At 8:15, we're catching up with 90s pop legend and queen of the jungle, the wonderful Kerry Katona will be here.
Plus, from waxing lyrical about rugby to rapping lyrical off the pitch, we're chatting with rugby star Simon Zebo, 9:20.
And keeping with the theme, she's done it as well. We are the tricolour. Katia, what else is coming up? Come on, girl.
I mean, if Sean's pants make up for the white, then yes.
We're in, right?
We are the flag.
We're the flag.
Well, good morning, folks. We're learning about Ireland's spiciest subcultures. We're talking about swinging later. Very interesting stuff. And we're discussing if baby giftings have gone wild. So when it comes to baby showers, christenings, weddings, or even birthdays, have we become too materialistic? Tune in and we'll find out.
Looking forward to
Well,
that.
it's time to check in on our wandering weatherman to see where he's woken up this morning. Derek, how are you?
Sean, sometimes I don't know where I'm waking up, but anyway, I'm live down here in County Kerry this morning. We're in the beautiful town of Killarney. It's a dry and settled start across eastern and northern parts. Plenty of showers scraping around western and southern parts out there today, with that ongoing risk of spot flooding, especially in fact to parts of the southwest later on today. But we've been on our GAA Whiz tour right across the country. Last week we visited Limerick and Kilkenny. Earlier on in the week we were at Ballyboden St Enda's in Dublin. This time it's the time for Kerry. Will Jack O'Connor's side make back-to-back wins for the green in gold? We're going to be paying a visit to Dr. Crokes GAA Club later on this morning. And being a Munster man, I'm probably going to shout for Kerry in the football final on Sunday.
At this stage, one of the counties have to get you on the pitch.
Yeah.
She's been there more than they have been at training at this stage all over the country. Fair play to you, Derek. We'll talk to you in just a little while, and hopefully the day will pick up there with the sunshine. But right now, it's time for the first time today to go over to the Virgin Media News Hub and say hello to Anne O'Donnell.
Thanks, Warren. Good morning. Well, retained firefighters are returning to strike action today. That's in a dispute over pay and conditions. Well, nationwide protests are expected, although members will be responding to life-threatening calls. The Taoiseach says he will not be suggesting to arm Gardaí. That's after concerns about safety on our city's streets. Well, Leo Varadkar is planning to meet with the Garda Commissioner, Drew Harris, to discuss crime and policing levels in the capital.
In my conversations with the Garda Commissioner and also rank and file Gardaí, one thing they've impressed on me since I gave those comments was that having an unarmed police force is something of real value, and that if we were, for example, to arm all of our Gardaí, you would then see an escalation in the extent to which people who may commit crimes are armed. So I think having an unarmed police force makes sense, and that's the advice that we're getting very strongly from the Gardaí and Gardaí themselves.
A jury has found 6 people guilty of the IS-claimed terrorist attacks in Brussels in 2016 that killed 32 people. Among those convicted for the suicide bombings at the airport and subway station was Salah Abdeslam, who already is serving a life sentence for Paris attacks. Several countries are battling wildfires across Europe and North Africa as high temperatures continue to wreak havoc. Here's the latest.
Fatalities in the fires. A plane fighting flames on the Greek island of Evia caught on camera before crashing into the torched terrain. No reprieve either on the island of Rhodes, where out-of-control wildfires continue to move inland. Greece, Italy, Turkey, Croatia and Algeria are just some of the countries battling blazes sparked by days of intense heat. At least 34 people are dead and 25 injured in northern Algeria, among them 10 soldiers encircled by flames during an evacuation of mountain villages and towns. Palermo airport in Sicily was forced to close yesterday as flames surrounded it, the result of weeks in sweltering temperatures in the high 30s and 40s. In the tourist hotspot of Dubrovnik in Croatia, almost 100 firefighters were deployed to tackle blazes fanned by strong winds, while in Turkey authorities evacuated a dozen homes and a hospital as a precaution after a wildfire spread through some 300 acres of forest near the resort of Kemer. Trish Laverty, Virgin Media News.
Elsewhere, more than 50 whales died in Western Australia earlier today after getting stranded for over 24 hours. Well, aerial footage released shows the whales gathering closely together east of Albany. That was before they became stranded.
We compare 14 insurance quotes to get you the best deal. So choose chill and work smarter, not harder.
Thank you very much, Cher. We're live here just outside the beautiful town of Killarney in County Kerry this Wednesday morning. In fact, we're just standing outside Fitzgerald Stadium here at the moment. We're going to be making our way towards Dr. Crokes GAA Club, of course, the build-up to All-Ireland football final Sunday as Dublin take on Kerry. So we're going to be giving you a preview of the game as well, a little bit of footballing action as well. That's all to come right across the morning. Anyway, let's take a look weather-wise at how it's shaping up now with Oisín Moore with us on cameras. And it is a dry, settled and bright start, especially across the eastern half of the country through much of Leinster and into Ulster out there this morning, waking up to some nice bright spells, nice sunshine. A different story though through parts of the west and across the Midwest and into Munster here. Plenty of showers scraping around parts of Mayo into Galway, through Limerick, Cork, Kerry. In fact, Cork there through parts of Mitchelstown in across Skibbereen, Clonakilty, stretching right along the southern coast into parts of Dungarvan there into County Waterford as well. So do stay nice and dry if you're in that neck of the woods in those light southerly winds. Now, right across the day, in fact, those winds will pick up pace. They will strengthen, especially across western and southern coasts. And out there today, we will see that system of showers track inland across the island, hitting parts of the Midlands by late afternoon into early evening. In fact, some of those showers will be on the heavy side, especially through parts of the southwest, where we're going to see an ongoing risk of localised spot flooding and surface water. So if you are out and about, do take a nice and handy. Top temps in and around 17 to 19 degrees. Across into tonight then, that rain feeding in a northeasterly direction. In behind it, it's going to be dull, damp, cloudy and misty to take us through tonight into tomorrow morning. Plenty of showers on the cards as well as we tuck our way into your Thursday, with temps falling no lower than 11 to 15 degrees. So that's how it's shaping up here in a damp and showery Killarney and County Kerry at the moment. We'll be back again live 7:35.
Chill Insurance work harder so you can work smarter. We compare 14 quotes to get you the best deal.
It is time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We'll start with the Irish Times. Its headline: Varadkar sets out stall for budget giveaway in October. The Taoiseach puts strong emphasis on providing supports for businesses. Tax cuts, energy supports and packages to reduce child poverty are also in the plans.
The Examiner leads with Ryan and Varadkar at odds over road funding. The Environment Minister hails €36 billion rail plan, but the Taoiseach is pushing for road investment. Eamon Ryan insists businesses must prioritise sustainable transport to help battle climate change.
Keep low profile on Dublin's streets, US warns its citizens. That's the front page of the Irish Independent. American citizens have been issued a warning about their personal safety in light of several incidents of violence in Dublin city centre recently.
Same story on the front page of the Herald, also leading with its headline: Dublin not for Uncle Sam.
Gardaí fear new hate laws will mean more desk work is the top story on the Daily Mail. Hate crime legislation will drastically increase the workload for Gardaí and leave less time for ordinary policing duties, the government was warned last night.
The Mirror goes with Blundertaker. A family from County Tipperary were left utterly shocked when their dad's remains were mixed up with a Frenchman's after being sent from Spain following his death.
And The Sun leads with Claire, my social media abuse hell. Claire Byrne reveals she did not pursue the Late Late Show gig after seeing the vile abuse she was subject to online.
The Star leads with Foreplay. Coldplay announced an unprecedented fourth night at Croker next year as thousands of fans deluged online pre-sales seeking tickets.
Our meeting was yesterday, just everyone on trying to get them. I don't think anyone got them, actually.
Even in the government briefing yesterday, Leo Varadkar giving a press conference, and there were people at the back in queues for Coldplay trying to get their tickets.
We really care what you're saying, Leo. We care, but we prefer Chris Martin more. Now, after the break, we are dissecting the stories making this morning's headlines.
And previewing Ireland's World Cup battle against Canada this afternoon. We'll see you back here.
buzz. Would we say buzz is building for budget 2024? And it only, of course, you're buzzed.
The nerd in me is
like, oh my God.
Full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead also for the All-Ireland Rail Service.
And joining us with the main stories of the morning is Jack Horgan-Jones, political reporter with the Irish Times. You equally buzzed for 5 straight months of budget coverage.
Yeah. It's like it happens
July.
earlier every year, doesn't it?
But it's a bumper, it's a bonanza budget. Of course, we're talking about it.
Okay.
Like the first talk about this was like April.
Yeah.
We were barely, the ink wasn't set on budget 2023. And
Yeah.
we were talking about 2024.
It's like climate change. Like, you know, the migratory patterns of budget behaviour are affected.
They're
and
getting
it comes
earlier and earlier.
every year. Yeah. And
What have we heard? Because obviously school's out for the summer with the Dáil. So what have we heard yesterday?
Yeah.
at the
So
end?
yesterday the Taoiseach held a big press conference to kind of stock up the newspapers and broadcasters with news lines over the coming days. And one of the main ones to emerge today is discussion of the budget. And I think that, you know, it's no surprise to see this being labelled as a giveaway budget because it is going to be expansionary. We know it's going to amount to at least 6.4 billion and then some giveaway one-off measures on top of that. And it's no surprise to see that he's saying it's going to target energy because energy prices still haven't fallen to a sufficient degree, that small businesses are going to be targeted for support as well. It's no surprise to see a Fine Gael Taoiseach saying that. And it's no surprise to see him also saying that there's going to be a tax package aimed at middle-income households. I think that the interesting part of this is that the early effort, particularly by Fine Gael and particularly by the Taoiseach, to brand this as a Fine Gael budget and to hit those kind of talking points that are very much associated with where he sees his core vote, small business, working families, and those struggling with the cost of living to be. And I think we saw this early and often, in this budgetary cycle with that intervention by the Fine Gael Ministers of State looking for the €1,000 tax cut. It's a little unclear as to whether that's actually going to materialise or not. I suspect it's probably not.
Yeah, he got into that because the budget isn't there, or the money isn't there in the summer economic statement to do it. But he did say yesterday, well, you know, that's not the final thing. We could raise a few taxes somewhere else, like they did last year with the concrete tax.
Yeah.
And put this in. And he had a lovely dig at the opposition where he said under Fine Gael since 2014, average families are $3,000 better off. You wouldn't get that with a left-wing government.
Yeah.
His exact quote.
Yeah,
What's inflation done?
Oh, well,
Since 2014.
Yeah, well,
$3,000 more, you know what I mean?
we're in the middle of coming out of the tail end of a recession, 2014 as well, you know.
I know, but it's also, it just seems like an awful lot of these one-off things, and we've got everyone kind of going, please don't reduce tax because inflation is so bad globally. Obviously, it's incredibly bad here. We're trying to bring it down. They're like, please don't cut taxes, please don't cut taxes. We've got to try to do something about this. But we are going to get one-off measures.
We are
right?
going to get one-off measures.
But they're not targeted.
On the tax point, you know, every year it seems that the Taoiseach, or Taoiseach as he was last year, has a kind of high-profile tax gambit. Last year, it was the new tax rate, and this year it's the €1,000 tax break. Last year's wasn't delivered, potentially neither will this year's be. So you know, there's questions over whether that's you know worthwhile doing or not. In terms of the one-off interventions, I think there's usually a mix of targeted, or there was last year rather. I say usually, it's only 1 year old. This in the tradition. There was a mix of targeted interventions, so you get things like the living alone allowance and double payments to certain welfare measures, and then you get the big, broad brushstroke ones, which came last year in the form of €600 worth of electricity credits delivered over the winter. I suspect we'll see something similar this year, perhaps not €600, but of that order, and kind of across the winter and in different periods all the way through to next year, and just in case there's an election next spring.
Just in case there could be one. And are we thinking? Do you think spring it could be happening?
No, I don't think it'll be spring.
No,
but,
they want to push it out for as long as possible.
End of next year, potentially after another budget, is sort of where I would
That's where
expect
we're
it to
going.
land. But they keep saying it's going to go full term. I don't know what you're hearing.
There was something else interesting yesterday that you were talking about earlier on, and this is Eamon Ryan and Leo Varadkar talking about rail and roads.
I never thought we'd be talking about rail reviews on here as like an exciting topic, but there is a bit of a spat between Leo Varadkar.
Well, it's certainly
and
a topic, whether it's exciting or not. Yes, no, you're right. This is interesting, right? So there was this big plan yesterday announced by the government, or rather, a study was published by the government. We had to see how much of it comes across to the full plan. And it's kind of like a railway idyll, you know, 200 kilometres per hour, half-hourly services between cities, and you know, if you like rail, it would be fantastic to see this come to pass.
So what Ireland used to have, you know, you'd be able to get to a train station. We're going to have like a TGV. It's going to be flying all over the place, like in France, and you'd be able to go to Donegal.
700,000 more people living within 5 kilometres of a railway station.
Okay.
But it was interesting. You're right. The Taoiseach made an interesting intervention afterwards, making the point that even if you drill down into the numbers, you'd be looking at 10% of freight going going via rail and 6% of passengers. So he's saying we will still need roads. And hand in hand with this investment, you will still need to have ongoing investment in the roads network. And this is one of the kind of flashpoints between the parties of government. You know, I have this long-standing theory that one of the things that could trip this government up and cause it to fold early is just some row over a kind of green issue or an environmental issue. And you see this come to the fore, particularly whenever roads emerge as a topic of discussion. The issue of road charges, of parking charge reform, all those kind of things. So I think that perhaps what you're seeing here is the Taoiseach kind of forearming himself and emphasising that, you know, this government will continue to spend on roads because we know that's very important to people who live in rural Ireland, to his rural backbenchers, and to those kind of core constituencies that he sees as potentially voting for Fine Gael next time out, just like with the budgetary interventions.
Yeah, I did have to laugh at sort of the 200 kilometres an hour target for trains. There are people doing 200 kilometres an hour on the M7 going down, and that doesn't seem to be stopping
we could do an autobahn. So it's 36 billion that they've said they want to invest. And we're at 36 billion. Now, we have spent 300 million on a metro in Dublin and nothing has happened there. How would you feel about this as someone who might be getting the train, going all over the place? Like Waterford, Wexford will be brought online. We're talking about Donegal, we're talking about Galway. They're trying to do it all over Ireland. Do you think this is something we actually have to start looking at properly? 0896 111 111, because it's infrastructure we once had and we just got rid of.
To bring it back into use. Jack, moving on, have you any cash?
I don't, not on me.
You're not alone, it seems. People are, cash is no longer.
Is this what happens between political journalists? Come here, any cash?
If you euro for the canteen, I need
well, this is my favourite fact about this because it says many young people never carry any cash. So therefore, because I don't have any cash now or usually ever, I'm a young person. I'm classified as a young person.
I'm so happy for you. Well done. I'm delighted for you.
My work here is done.
We've de-aged you in the...
So yes, this new survey shows that a lot of Irish people continue to have a strong attachment to cash, but a third of those who do carry cash say they have less than 20 euros on them. It's funny, when I do carry cash, I do kind of feel richer, and I do feel like I have a superpower, and I do feel like it's a bit like the National Party. If fiat currency collapsed, I would be in a
I'm sorry, I should have asked you.
Or if
gold bars in your car. Actually,
gold bars, exactly.
That's the gold bar story.
More of a bullion man. Yeah.
Yes. So this is, but we are continuing in this country to carry a little bit of cash, and with that 20, you know, I think I've always said that I'm trying to go back to cash because I spend less. You know, I find that I spend less.
It's easier to budget,
You know what you're spending. Like when it goes, sorry, that coffee is $4.70. No, thanks. I'm grand. Thanks very much. You know.
What I've I top up the Revolut card to a very specific amount, and I said that's what I have. That's what I have to spend this month. And if I spend that, that's fine. And the rest goes into whatever savings or whatever, instead of carrying cash.
Instead of carrying cash.
And then I'm like, now I do feel bad when you pass like a charity or whatever, and you don't have anything to give. You're like, oh, I'm really sorry.
That is the thing. It's kind of like that. But we are continuing to do it.
My daughter stole a lollipop from a charity this weekend.
She didn't give them anything?
Well, I was supposed to give them something, and I just kind of had to.
You had no cash?
I had no cash, and she was already tucking in, so...
You stole from a
It's because I'm a young person, you know.
It was resting in your account. That is terrible stuff.
I'll get them back. Yeah.
The thing is that banks, of course, do want to move us to a cashless society. Yeah. Because they say it's less fees, they don't want people doing that, but there are issues if you're an older person, like...
Yes, and when they go to do this, there could be enormous backlash. Remember AIB did it last year or the year before, and there was this huge kind of upsurge of not violence, anger, particularly in rural Ireland where they were looking to close branches, and you know when ATM networks are shut down. And I think that the Minister of Finance has actually promised that we will have access to cash laws because it is still legal tender.
Absolutely.
You know, and a lot of people do prefer to rely on, and often they are within those kind of older cohorts. So you know there's a safeguarding issue. There's an issue where people should be able to use legal tender in whatever form they choose to do so.
Well, we'd love to hear from you. I'm always talking about this, banging on about this, about whether people have, because of what's happening with inflation, have you decided to start using cash, or are you like Sean and go, this is my budget, I have it in my card, I don't want to touch any dirty money. 0896 111 111. We would love to hear from you, and whatever charity, we will find out the charity that he robbed from, that Jack Horgan-Jones robbed from, and you are going to get them back, right?
Yeah, well,
before the budget.
It was my daughter who robbed from them.
Your daughter. What age is she?
I'll blame my 4-year-old.
What age is she?
She's 4.
4. She started young.
She should know better. 4 years old, they should really know better.
It's so bad. Jack Horgan-Jones from the Irish Times. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jack. Cheers.
Thanks a million, Jack. Still to come this hour, we are seeing how the girls in green will fare against Canada this afternoon in their World Cup game.
And we're also going to be discussing if the standard of newborn baby gifts, do you know what? If it's just gotten out of hand. Lollipops for everybody, maybe. We'd love your thoughts on this. It's 0896 111 111. Do you have to buy a baby shower, baby and christening present? What's going on? We'd love to hear from you. We'll talk to you in just a little while. Now, following their defeat against Australia last week, albeit to a penalty, the pressure is on for Ireland to perform in their next World Cup game against Canada that's happening later on today.
Joining us to discuss their chances, it's Gavin Cooney from the 42.ie, and joining us from Perth is Sinead O'Carroll from the Journal.ie. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Gavin, you might run us through the permutations just to start. So where are we for the people who are maybe only tuning in today?
Must not lose.
Right.
Keep it Ireland, we can do a kind of Italian 90 and draw this 0-0, and then a win against Nigeria in the final group game might well be enough to get through the group on 4 points. If Ireland win, they're in a fantastic position to qualify. We'll likely only need a draw against Nigeria in the final group game.
Okay.
But here's where it gets slightly scary, is that if Ireland lose, it's probably curtains and good night.
Right.
OK, and you what did Vera Pauw say in her press conference?
Well, it was a great little window into Vera Pauw's attitude of the game, where she said the first part of winning is not losing. So she did initially say that this was a must-win, and then kind of instantly revised her opinion to that line that it really is must not lose.
Yeah,
OK.
Very, very Ted Lasso of her to,
It is.
Let's just not lose.
I kind of like it.
Kind of Irish as well, isn't it? Let's
There'll be
just
a
not
sign
lose.
written "Believe" over
Yeah,
the door.
yeah,
That's what's
everyone's
going on.
having
Sinead O'Carroll is outside Perth Stadium in Perth. Are you in the fan? Where are you, Sinead?
Yeah, I'm in the fan zone here. It's starting to get pretty busy. We're watching Japan, Costa Rica at the moment, but there are a good few. You can see behind me a good few Irish jerseys, a lot of tricolours around. A few Canadians standing beside me as well, but definitely outnumbered by Irish fans waiting for an 8 p.m. kickoff. So 1 p.m. your guys' time, 8 p.m. here. So there are a lot of nerves. There's waves of optimism, waves of pessimism coming over everyone I've been talking to here. But the main wish is for a goal. Everyone wants a World Cup moment. I was just talking to a few lads here who have made the trip from Sydney. They live in Perth, and they're looking for a Ray Houghton moment, and that seems to be the general consensus among fans here. They think we'll get the win. The pessimism is maybe a 0-0 draw because Canada play a little bit like us in a lot of ways, so it has the hallmarks of a 0-0 draw about it. But yeah, people just want to see the team score a goal.
How very lovely and Irish of them, being optimistic. Then don't get notions. Let's step it back. Let's step it back. But as we saw, as you mentioned, like Canada, they're 7th in the world, and sort of they're the Olympic champions, and we kind of play similarly. As Gavin just said there, Vera Pauw said the first thing to do is not to lose the game. And a lot of people at home were kind of hoping that she'd have more an attacking game, during Australia in the opening game. Is there any hopes of that happening at all?
Well, Vera Pauw talks about her back five like we would talk about the world being round. She's like, well, I have to have a back five. So there's absolutely no way that we won't be playing 5 at the back. What we're hoping, I think, within that, even if there's 5 at the back, that she'll find a way of pushing Katie McCabe further up the pitch, that she'll find a way of maybe bringing on people like Abby Larkin and Amber Barrett earlier, or not waiting to go down in the game before that happens. So Canada are in an interesting position because they're under a lot of pressure to score goals. They've had a dearth of goals as well. So they pride themselves on being defensive, on keeping clean sheets. So now we have 2 teams who pride themselves on their defence, who pride themselves on not leaking goals, but who are both under pressure to go and get 3 points and both under pressure to go and score goals. So, this could be a really unpredictable game in some ways, even though it should be kind of direly predictable.
Yeah, you're setting it up either for a classic or a total and utter defensive.
It could just be the Somme, them just standing in a line and not moving for 90 minutes.
Sinead, what are you hearing about Louise Quinn out there? Is she going to play?
Louise, we went to training last night. We were allowed in for 15 to 20 minutes of training, and she did all the movements of the warm-up that made me less worried about her, like all of the kind of turning around cones, hopping up on one leg. She did that on both her right and her left leg. And she looked like she was gearing up to play the full game afterwards. Vera Pauw seemed a little bit pessimistic in her press conference, but I think if Louise is in any way okay, she will play through pain tonight.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be worried about her. I'd be a bit more worried about Heather Payne. She was wearing significant strapping around her hamstring, and the way she plays and having to get up and down that right wing and the pace that she has, I would be more worried about her, to be honest.
Okay, so that's something to worry about. Again, she gives and she takes away, much like the Irish people. Gavin, the thing is, when we thought about the Euros was a goal bonanza. Like every time you watched a game, you were like, what is that score? Obviously, during this World Cup, it's been much more sedate, and I think not what we were expecting. And we do want to see Ireland score some goals.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna come down to a similar conversation as we've been having with the men's team for a while. Like, are Ireland limited attacking wise, or is the manager limiting us attacking wise? Like Vera Pauw, like Sinead has eloquently put out, said there, that she's very wedded to her back five system. So hence Katie McCabe plays quite deep. Denise O'Sullivan plays quite deep. And then when Ireland get the ball forward, they just have so much ground to cover to get up the pitch and try and cause dangers and cause a threat on the counter-attack. We saw Ireland were capable of doing that when they went a goal down against Australia. That's kind of the slightly frustrating thing.
Yeah.
That, you know, had we just started the game like this, maybe we could have caused more problems. But then do you lose too much defensively? So, I mean, Ireland can throw the shackles off when they go a goal behind, but if this game is still 0-0 after an hour or after 70 minutes, you'd love to see, you know, Vera Pauw turn to the bench and then go to Abby Larkin and then go to Amber Barrett and just say, let's go and win this, because as Sinead again has pointed out, Canada have their own issues. You know, they've only scored once, I think, in their last 4 games. They've had very, very poor preparation for this. They didn't even get a kind of a farewell friendly game on home soil because of dysfunction in their federation. So it would be great if Ireland could capitalise on all of that, because Ireland's preparation has been pretty good, not injury scares for Denise and Katie McCabe notwithstanding.
Yeah. Is there any chance she just breaks in the mould, starts Abby Larkin? Because that last half hour was it was so different.
Yeah, it was. I don't know, to be honest. I think that Abby Larkin, you know, this is the problem with being a super sub in a way. You just kind of get buttonholed as exactly that. And just like, well, if you're that good off the bench this week, you might be that good off the bench again next week.
Yeah.
And, you know, the player that she would theoretically replace is Sinead Farrelly, who's a real favourite of Vera Pauw. She's brought her in, having been out of the game for, 8 years? There's something... long time, regardless. So, you know, Marissa Shiva struggled, obviously gave away the penalty against Australia, but she does have pace to get Ireland up the pitch, and she has a very good work ethic, and it helps to cover for McCabe when McCabe does go forward. So I don't think there'll be a whole lot of change, to be honest. I'm open to be proving wrong in a couple of hours, but don't think so.
No.
He's just like, Sinead, just before we let you go, can you let us know what it's been like over there for the past while? You're obviously following the team around. We know that we can see all the green jerseys behind you right there. What has been the reaction to the World Cup on the ground in Australia?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. A lot of people, I think, are being introduced to this team for the first time, especially people who are living in Australia and who've decided to come to the matches. And I was just talking to 3 guys in the fan zone there who said, you know, they wanted to come to a World Cup. They wanted to come to Ireland at a World Cup. And while they hadn't watched a huge amount of the women play football before, they're really impressed and they're completely sold on the game now. So I think this team are gathering fans along the way. I think the sport is gathering fans along the way. And I'm really excited about tonight. Tonight is a football stadium. It's 20,000 people. I think it'll be probably a huge, significant Irish crowd amongst that 20,000 people. But I think there's going to be a wall of sound that will be as impressive as last Thursday, because it's a really, really intimate stadium. We're right beside the pitch. And I'm really excited to see the atmosphere there later with all of those Irish people cheering on what they hope will be a moment and keep that optimism going.
Absolutely.
Very finally, prediction?
Amazing.
Let's go optimistic 1-0.
Yay!
Gavin. Optimism?
Miserable 1-0. Just as the national result, but we have a goal in there as well, and it keeps us showing the road until the final result.
Something to celebrate, but keep us somewhat miserable. The most Irish of
Fantastic.
Irish results.
Sinead O'Carroll, who is in Perth Stadium ahead of the match, which is happening at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much from the Journal.ie, and Gavin Cooney from the 42.ie. Thank you both so much. And later on, we will be going live to Virgin Media News reporter Paul Quinn from PJ O'Brien's in Sydney. Any Irish person who's been in Australia, you know exactly where we're talking about. Thanks so much, guys. Now, up next, Sean has been dying to know about this. He won't shut up about it. If the cost of baby gifting has left you rattled?
Oh, I see
Too
what you
much?
did there.
Yeah.
I see what you did there. We're discussing the predicament of newborn presents after the break.
Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, earlier this week on Instagram, I was asking people if they felt that, you know, giving presents for a baby, had it gone a little bit wild? So we now have the kind of American thing of baby showers in Ireland, so there's a present for that. Then there is the baby being born, so there's a present for that. Then there's the christening, mementos or money or whatever you have to do, and the new arrivals, and then you're at the first birthday. And it turns out that a lot of people spend the first year of a baby's life just buying them stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. So to join our discussion today, we've got Newstalk's Simon Simon Tierney, and CEO of Parentline, Aileen Hickey. You're very welcome.
Good morning, guys.
I sort of call this like the Kardashian effect, because a lot of my friends talk about it, and like after seeing a show like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, they really popularise and normalise baby showers and gender reveals. So it's kind of an everyday thing now, no matter how big or small it is. But I'll come to you first, Simon. What is your take? Are you a fan on a gift giving for a newborn baby and for parents?
Yeah, I think there's different things that you can do. Like one of the gifts that I got after our second baby was born was that my cousin sent us over a voucher for like a delivery voucher or something like that, that we could get a meal without having to worry about dinner. That was a great call, great shout. Yeah,
so
really
forget
helpful.
the baby, give me stuff.
Forget the baby, because people always think, you got to get a present for the baby. What about the parents? They're the ones that are really struggling.
You decided to have the baby. Why are we getting you presents? You know what I mean?
Did we decide to have the baby?
I think there was a decision made somewhere along the line, Simon. Because I forgot about that as well. There's blooming gender reveals these days. Aileen Hickey, what do you reckon? Presents for everything for a baby?
I am so against all of this. Now, I understand from Simon, because he's got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, so, you know...
He's in the trenches.
He's in the trenches, yeah. I'm out of the trenches, and I didn't get all those presents, so I'm totally against it. But, you know, and it does start, so these days, you know, you mentioned the baby shower, but it starts with the gender reveal. I mean, where gender reveals came out of is absolutely beyond me. You know, people bursting big balloons and rainbows coming out of the sky with blue and pink out of them, and, like, it's just taken to a new level. I remember when I went to my very first baby shower about 15 years ago. I mean, I was shocked that there was a baby shower. Yeah. I was shocked to be invited. I couldn't believe that there was such a thing in Ireland, because, you know, I'd seen it in America, but, you know, I didn't know it had come into Ireland. And, you know, we're all sitting around in a circle, like a seance, you know, waiting for the mother-to-be to open each present one by one. And, obviously there's no drink, you know, because it's an alcohol-free zone.
Oh, you're going to bad baby showers.
It was a bad baby, and in the middle of the table, so she's opening them all, and, you know, she has to make up something new about each present that she opens, and in the middle of the table was this big cake in the shape of a nappy. Like, I mean,
I don't want to eat that.
It was.
I do not want to eat that.
I mean, I was absolutely gobsmacked. So there's bringing the present to the baby, to the gender reveal.
Yeah.
Then there's the baby shower.
Yeah.
Then the baby's born,
yeah,
and you have to get the actual baby present. Then there's the christening, if you're asked that. So that's 4 presents before the baby might be 6 months. Like I'm just waiting for the conception party. So you have to bring a party to the conception party. The I peed on the stick party. I mean, where is it going? I mean,
so
be careful.
Would you? Is this something you would practice? Like, would you buy gifts now if there's a new arrival, or like, where do you draw the line?
I buy the present for when the baby is actually born. When I know what the baby is, the baby's actually been born. That's what I got myself. I try and buy presents that are something that they will use, you know, clothing that's for 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months, or share, you know, into, you know, buying a rocker or, you know, something practical. I mean, I know myself. I mean, I have shelf loads of absolute rubbish, to be honest with you. I mean, I have silver teddy bears, silver tooth holders, musical unicorns, glass angels, you know, embroidered quilts, embroidered pillows. You know, I mean, and I'm sorry to all the people who gave them to me, because I'm sure there was a lot of thought went into them.
Yeah.
But, you know, 20 years down the line, you know, what do you do with them?
I worked in the gifts department of Rocha Stores, and the most returned present was, without a shadow of a doubt, the baby christening mementos. We'd love to hear from you when it comes to this. What do you think? For all of these things, should we be getting presents, or have we gone a little bit too far? 0896 111 111. But the thing is, Simon, I suppose we don't have that village feel that we used to have, where your family is all around. We're all very disparate. And I suppose having these baby showers, whether you bring presents or not, it is a way to bring a community together, bring your friends
I've even
together.
attended a baby shower online, like during lockdown, like, because people just wanted, I guess, that sense of togetherness.
Well, I think, like, for us, with our first child, we had the baby shower in Brazil, because my wife is Brazilian, and that was great crack. It was at night time. So we were allowed to have booze. There was loads of booze.
And men and
the
women?
men came. And I think that's something that we could really adopt here in Ireland.
That's not a baby shower, that's a party, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the best type of baby shower, is to make it into a party. Like, it's, I think that the men should be involved in it. Otherwise, there's this sense that the responsibility for the parenting and the whole process is on the woman. And that's very traditional here in Ireland. I think we need to get men involved in it too.
Yeah. But has it gone a little bit too far that we have become very materialistic, Simon? Because whatever about having a party, then it's like, what do you bring? Like, obviously, you're going to someone's house, you're bringing a bottle of wine, but has it gotten a bit too much?
I think when there's an expectation, that's a signal to me that it has gone too far. The best gifts are given when the receiver, isn't expecting them. Like, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we need to have conception parties. I do get conception gifts for my male friends.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
What?
Because for a lot of guys, and for women as well, it's such a huge deal when they actually announce that they're pregnant. They might have been struggling to get pregnant for a long time, and that is actually the moment that's really worth celebrating, I think, sometimes. They might wait 3 months to announce it, like it is the tradition here in Ireland. So when I get my guy friends, when they tell me that they're expecting a baby, I get them this book, which is brilliant. It's called The Irish Dad's Guide to Pregnancy and Beyond. It's my Bible.
Okay.
I sort of love that. Like, it's not a six-pack of beers.
No, you could do something during this.
So I get that book, pack of beer, and a 20-pack of smokes. Yeah, it's
keep it traditional.
But the mother-to-be isn't getting any of that, I take it.
Well, they're trying to get involved in it, though. That's nice when it's all about the man.
You know, I suppose where I'm coming from is, well, first of all, it is the expectation thing. So it's like the expectation that you have to give something. And I also think there's like the expectation of I will now be receiving stuff. Not everyone is comfortable getting all these presents either. I mean, you know,
100%, yeah.
You know, I mean, sometimes I get kind of sick of saying thank you for stuff, you know, because, you know, you don't necessarily want all these, you know, kind of tributary gifts.
So basically, everyone, do not get Aileen Hickey anything ever again.
No,
she doesn't want it
for my birthday
and birthday.
But you know, and also, you know, I mean, for people who are not having children, who don't want to have children, or you know, who have no intention of having children, the fact that they have to buy all these presents for people who are having children, and people do make the decision to have children themselves, and you know, with the cost of living and everything going up, I mean, the fact that you might have spent €200 on presents for 4 different occasions before a child is 6 months old. It's it's too much.
It does seem a lot, and that it becomes materialistic. We'd love to hear from you today about this when it comes to the giving presents for children, what it is it a good thing or a bad thing? 089 611 111. Again, Matt Cooper, if you're listening, your wife Aileen Hickey said she doesn't want presents anymore. And CEO of Parentline, thank you so much. And Simon Tierney, journalist at Newstalk, thank you both so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Conception present, I love it. Still to come this morning, Kerry Katona is going to be checking in.
Plus, we're learning how to spice up things in the bedroom and spice up the lamb in your kitchen as well. See you back in 3.
They go together. No problem. It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We're going to start with the Irish Times. Its headline, Varadkar sets out stall for budget giveaway in October. The Taoiseach puts strong emphasis on providing supports for businesses. Tax cuts, energy supports and packages to reduce child poverty are also in the budget plans.
The Examiner leads with Ryan and Varadkar at odds over road funding. The Environment Minister hails €36 billion rail plan, but the Taoiseach is pushing for road investment. Eamon Ryan insists businesses must prioritise sustainable transport to help battle climate change.
Keep low profile on Dublin streets, US warns its citizens. That's the front page of the Irish Independent this morning. American citizens have been issued a warning about their personal safety in light of several incidents of violence in Dublin city centre recently.
Similarly, the Herald also leads with that story. Its headline, Dublin's not for Uncle Sam.
In a different story, Gardaí fear new hate laws will mean more desk work. That is the top story on the Daily Mail. Apparently, hate crime legislation will drastically increase the workload for Gardaí and leave less time for ordinary policing duties, which is surely hate crime. The government was warned last night.
Does that make hate crime extraordinary?
I don't understand that at all,
know. The Mirror goes with Blundertaker. A family from County Tipperary were left utterly shocked when their dad's remains were mixed up with a Frenchman's after being sent from Spain following his death.
And The Sun leads with Claire, my social media abuse hell. Claire Byrne reveals she did not pursue the Late Late Show gig after seeing the vile abuse she was subject to online.
The Star leads with Foreplay. Coldplay announced an unprecedented fourth night at Croker next year as thousands of fans deluged online pre-sales. Sorry, that only struck now. We've
Did
heard
it
that 2
click with
hours.
you? That you were
clicks
like,
there. I was like, I get it.
They're doing
I get
a
it.
pun.
That's very
what they're
funny.
doing there. And we are talking about swinging a little bit later on.
Oh, I'm so looking
together.
forward to that.
Third coffee and it finally clicked.
Well, guys, as always, we do love hearing from you through our line 0896 111 111. We have a load of texts in, so we will crack on and get into it. Earlier, we had Aileen Hickey from Parent Line and Simon Tierney from News Talk, and we were talking if baby gift giving has gone wild or not. We have a text from Caroline that says, I actually had a gender reveal, baby shower, and christening. My baby shower turned into a session. I ended up leaving at 9 p.m, but if I had another baby, I will not be having a baby shower or a gender reveal. I was literally trying to find places to hide the stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
All the presents.
All the presents.
Good problem to have, isn't it?
Yeah, but like, what are you going to do with it? And a lot of it is, I swear to God, I worked in a gift. Some of it's tat, like it's just pat.
I'd say just give a bit of money. I don't know.
Give a bit of cash so you can buy yourself something. John, far too much pressure on buying baby presents. I usually cop out, give cash. Parents can save it for the child or use it to buy something that is needed. I do the same for birthdays and christenings. If you are giving, as I have been told by my podcast partner, Emma Doran, if you're giving a parent money for a child and that child doesn't know what money is, that child is never getting that money.
You'll never see
the
that
parents
money.
spending that money.
Never.
I particularly like the text in from Mark. A conception present. Lads, my mates forgot about my 30th birthday present. If I could only be born again, I'd get more
You'd
gifts.
get more.
Mark, who is now born again something.
Something, that's it, yeah.
Nip Reach says, I always buy the gift for the mum, a voucher for a blow dry or nails, a bit of me time after being the main carer for 9 months. That's very thoughtful.
Yeah, that's nice.
Very thoughtful, but then you also have to get the baby gift as well.
And,
anyway.
And what about the dads? What about I'm gonna be that guy. What about the dads?
Hashtag what about the dads? 0896 111 111. We're also talking about the report that shows that in Ireland about 80% of people still do carry cash, but normally about €20 or less. And Delia says cash is king. Recently I met 2 children in a shop. It was their birthdays. I knew them. I gave them the change that I had in my pockets. They were absolutely delighted. And their mother told me they had never handled money before.
Wow.
Change is great for teaching children to count, total up and look at the cost. Tap Tap uses no brain power. You are so right. There have been so many reports saying that children don't know the value of money because it's tap, just tap. Yeah. And you get what you want.
And Deborah's reminded me of my own childhood. I'm 73 and like having cash to spend. I find I can budget better and spend less in the shops when it's physical currency. I also love giving the grandkids a fiver every now and again. Wasn't that always great?
It was
you got a fiver.
Like a fiver is like €500 when you're that age.
And a fiver from Nanny just hit different.
It was
It
so
just
good.
hit a bit different, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
My nanny gave me a cow. Well, we already talked about this.
A cat? What?
I said when I made my communion, because my grandmother had a farm back in Burundi, and you would gift someone a cow on a wedding or a special occasion like that. So I kind of wish.
Do you still have it?
I think she's still alive. I named her Sinead. Yeah, she's called Sinead.
Oh my God.
Sinead the cow in Burundi.
We don't talk about Sinead anymore.
We don't talk about Sinead anymore.
Sinead went to the other farm.
I was just about to say, we'd have Derek out there in a flash if we could, just having a chat with Sinead. And there, if you can beat Cashia's cow, that's good. 0896 111 111.
Yeah, the communion cash cow. There you go. Still to come, we're talking about life, love, and homework horror stories with the showbiz powerhouse, Kerry Katona. Now, it's impossible not to bop to that.
You have to.
There's just, you have to get the shoulders going.
Yes, you do.
Now, from girls group to Bush Tucker trials and reality TV to best-selling books, our next guest has quite literally done it all.
She really has. Kerry Katona is here to tell us about her latest autobiography. We played the tune. It is indeed called Whole Again. Good morning, Kerry. How are you doing?
I am amazing. How are you two?
It is so lovely to have you here this morning because obviously this is your third autobiography and only a person like Kerry Katona could have lived 3 lives.
I know. You know what? A next one, I might just do a colouring book or a word search.
Well, that would be mine. That would be the extent of what you could get out of my autobiography. So interesting.
Yeah,
in my life.
It's been a very, very eventful life, and I'm really proud of you. For somebody who's dyslexic with a minimal education, I'm not academic in the slightest, but I'm very business savvy. I remember when I actually moved over to Ireland with Brian, I was pregnant. I couldn't read all right. I'm dyslexic. I actually, with Brian being on tour all the time, I did a typing course and I taught myself how to read and write properly.
I never knew that.
No.
That's astounding. That's amazing to have done that.
And so many people, like we always underestimate how many people actually struggle with adult literacy. So to go and do that and teach yourself, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I'll never forget, like, being in Atomic Kitten. I mean, bear in mind, I had 4 sets of foster parents, 3 refugees. I went to 8 different schools, which I was very rarely in because my mum never let me go to school, really. So I couldn't even spell the word orange at some point. And I just remember thinking, we was in a restaurant with Atomic Kitten and I couldn't even read the menu. So my manager used to have to read it for me. And then I remember I was so dim when it came to restaurants. So my local restaurant was like a chippy, you know, a fish and chip shop. I was in this Mexican restaurant. I'll never forget, Liz ordered fajitas. And I was like, oh my God, she's going to eat a dead baby. Chicken fetus. That's how uneducated I was with food. Whereas my children are very educated with food, very educated. You know, you can go in restaurants sometimes and feel so intimidated. Not anymore, obviously.
Yeah.
But and I've wrote 6 books.
I mean, that's the 6 books is absolutely stunning. Talk to us about this one, and because you get into some of the harder parts of your life, and particularly around your ex-husband George, which I can imagine is only like an incredibly difficult thing to write about.
Yeah, writing this book was definitely the hardest because George isn't here to defend himself either. So this is my truth. This is what the children went through. And halfway through the book, I was so traumatized. I said, I can't do this no more. I was literally, I went back on antidepressants. I was so triggered by it all because I do find writing these books and talking about it is like therapy, although I've never been for professional therapy. But it was very, very, very difficult because it's also DJ's dad. But George was a real troubled soul, and I really tried to help him, but you can't help somebody who doesn't want the help themselves. And George wasn't meant for this world. He really wasn't. And what I found about doing the book is the guilt I had on my children, the fact that they went through it as well. And that's something I'm still learning to try and forgive myself. They never witnessed anything, but they did see the bruises. And that is something I'm still trying to forgive myself. And I understand now when people say, oh, just walk away, just leave. It's not that easy. So my mum was in a very, very abusive relationship. My mum's fella told her he was Freddy Krueger. He stabbed her. I pulled the knife out. I got put in foster home and I went, I'll never go through that, Mum. And I ended up being in the same relationship for 6 years. And I said to my mum, I get it. I understand now how you can't just walk away. It's so difficult. But I did. And I'm here.
You are here and you're going. And the thing is that all of this was playing out in the tabloids and in the media. And we were watching, you know, yourself and George go around the place. God rest him, even with everything that he's done. He is the father of one of your children. But where do you get solace in that? Like, is it your children going, when you eventually found the strength to walk away, is it because I got to do this for my kids?
You know what? He threatened me with a knife. And Molly and Lily was there. And Molly gave me such a look of pure disappointment. She just gave me this look of just at me. And, oh, God, I'm upset. And I thought, what am I doing? What am I teaching my children here? What am I teaching my son? And I started getting into The Secret and Manifestation. And I read a book called Think and Grow Rich. And I read a book called The Power of Now. And I got into positive podcasts like listening to Bob Proctor and Les Brown and Lisa Nichols. And I got onto a real spiritual path. And that really, really helped me. Now, bear in mind, I've been clean for 14 years. And I could tell when George had done drugs. So it was very difficult to walk away from somebody who needed help, but it was either him or me and my kids. And my kids will always come first.
And when you were writing about that and obviously reliving all of it, do you talk to them before you put it down? Or, like, you know, you're putting stuff out for everyone to see. I don't mean that, you know, that everyone is seeing it, but it's a very difficult thing to share, and it's also difficult for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you say, so there's a lot of stuff in there taken out as well, because when I've done my other autobiographies, the children were very young, so it didn't really matter. But I'm very mindful of the fact that I'm only 22 next month. Can you believe it? 22. And Lily's 20, Heidi's 16, Max is 15, and DJ's 9. Obviously, DJ hasn't read it. But the older 4 children, I gave them a copy and I said, whatever you don't want in there, we'll take it out, because I'm not there to tell your story, because that's their story to tell. I'm there telling my story. So sorry, I've got a really sore throat. So we sat down and we went through everything, and everything that they didn't want in there was obviously taken out, because, you know, it affects them as well. But they also understood as well. They also understood when I was really struggling and I wanted to stop. All the children said, "Mum, you got to keep going, because this is going to help so many people."
Yeah. That's just the thing. And the fact is that your 3 books are being turned into a movie. Molly's in Trinity right now. She's on holiday. She was just trying to ring you a second ago, your eldest. She's living at home in Ireland. Obviously, you lived here for a very long time as well. Kerry, everything that you've been through, you know, you've been bankrupt, you've come back from the edge, you're making money in all sorts of different ways, and you're very proud about it in OnlyFans, and absolutely fair play to you. Do you fear about losing it all, or are you feeling in a much more comfortable place these days?
No, I'm in a much more comfortable place. You always have that fear, because I've been bankrupt twice. Bear in mind, I came from nothing. You know, I was in a semi-independent home when I was 16. I got my first council flat when I was 17. Met Brian McFadden when I was 18. I'm in this girl band. I'm living this fairy tale world. I become a millionaire in my own right, and it all goes like that. Just lost it all. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, that was, because all those little rats and hangers-on, they all just vanished. And I packed up and I moved down south, and it was the best thing that happened. I got myself out of bankruptcy, went back into bankruptcy because there was the accountant, it doesn't really matter. And I'm back to being a millionaire again. And can I just make it really clear? I have been on every side of the coin you can think of. My clothes is from a jumble sale. I got Verucas off secondhand shoes. You know, I have the mansions. I've got the Lamborghinis. Got that. None of that matters. None of that matters. All that money gives you is options to give you better options. When I'm on my deathbed, I can't take the latest Gucci bag or take my Lamborghini. All I can take is my memories. So for me, the money is giving me options to create amazing adventures with my children. And that's my drive, my children. Whether it is being on OnlyFans, which was the best thing I ever did. And yes, I'll get judged for it for showing a bit of nipple, but that's because I'm from a council estate and I'm Kerry Katona. So no matter what I do, I'm always going to get, you know, put down for. I'll get crap all the time because I'm Kerry Katona. It doesn't matter what I do. So obviously before I started the OnlyFans, I spoke to the children. The only one who really wasn't up for it was Lily. And then when the money started coming in, she was getting the iPads and getting all the stuff. She was like, this is great. And for me, there's no different than going on a beach, building sandcastles, being topless, and a pap taking a picture. I'm just in complete control. But what makes me laugh in society, you're put in a box.
Yeah.
You're put in the separation because I'm from a council estate, because all my downfalls have been very public, because I've done the drugs, because I've done the bankruptcy and I've had all this hardship, you know, I get judged even more. Where you've got the likes of like, no, I'm not nowhere near their category. You got like Natalie Portman in Black Swan, who does something quite full on to herself. And then you've got Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, fully on naked. But that's art. And that's amazing, darling. And we'll give them awards because they're thespians. So, yeah, it doesn't matter what I do. I'm always going to get put down for it. So, you know what? If I'm going to get put down for it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make the money, give my kids a private education, and just make the most of life. And I've got to a point, what you think of me, it's not my business. All that matters is what my children think of me. And I know they're very, very proud of me and they love me. And that's what matters at the end of the day.
I swear to God, I think everything of you. Every single time I've ever spoken to you, it has been an utter joy. And she's got the colours out for the girls in green as well. And always says it as it is. Kerry Katona, thank you so much. Brand new book, Holding
Thank
It.
you for having me. Go buy the book. It's dead good. I'm in it.
There it is, Hold Again. Kerry, thank you so much.
And someone would
Have a great day, guys. God
Bye,
bless.
Kerry.
Thanks, Kerry.
Perfect coffee every time. Tassimo sponsors cookery on Ireland AM.
Welcome back. Now, Jack O'Keefe is spicing it up in the kitchen today.
Yeah, he's making harissa, sautéed lamb and veggies with parsley, hummus. And Jack, you've brought your massive courgette.
I'm not going to take credit for that courgette. My landlord's courgette.
Oh, right.
Phenomenal. Left it on my doorstep last night. I was like, there we go. Now I'm going to bring that with me.
That's a normal thing.
Normal thing, yeah.
That's normal size.
Yeah, we got from this time. I'd say from next month now, myself and the missus are just going to be eating courgette every single day. Give it about 3 weeks, and the tomatoes will be ready, and we'll be eating tomatoes about 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
Great,
so let me ask you: have you got a bit of courgette in this? Or
We do. That's why I brought it, because I actually used up some smaller ones. I wasn't going to waste that in it. So we're doing some beautiful harissa spiced lamb with sautéed veg. It's really simple midweek meal. I have one here prepared earlier. We'll get into that later. So I have just a mix of random veggies.
Okay.
So in the recipe you'll see on the website, it's mange to courgettes and onions, garlic. Whatever you have knocked on that bottom of your fridge.
Yeah.
Courgettes are great this time of the year. They're cheap. Most supermarkets have them on those special 40-cent deals or whatever they do.
Yeah.
So I've just sautéed that in a pan with a little bit of olive oil. That's it. A little bit of salt and pepper. Finished. So just get it nice and brown, and then I remove it, set it aside to a bowl, or at home you can use a plate or whatever, and then I bang the pan back on the heat.
And
get
there's
that
no
nice and hot.
seasoning in that. That's just nice and
Just a little bit of just salt, that's it.
A bit of salt, yeah.
We're going to put all the flavour onto the lamb.
Okay.
Now, with the lamb, I'm using some lamb chops that are just cut up into kind of stir-fry strips. But you can use whatever you want. You can use chicken, you can use beef, whatever. Whatever's kind of on deal in the supermarkets. Inside this, I've already some sugar, some chopped up rosemary, some chopped up oregano, some olive oil and some lemon juice. And in on top of that, I'm going to put some of this magical stuff, which is the harissa spice.
Lovely.
You can make it yourself. You can get loads of recipes online for harissa spice mix, but just go into the supermarket and buy the sachet.
It's just a variety of different spices,
exactly.
is it?
And if you don't have it and you don't want to head down to the shops, tikka masala spice, tandoori spice, fajita spice,
Cajun,
any of that.
bit hot.
But just go a bit heavy on it.
Yeah.
So I have about 2 portions here. What am I saying? For like a rural lad like me, that's probably half a meal, probably a quarter. So quite heavy on the spice. And then a little added extra, some flaked almonds in on top.
Oh.
And as the lamb is browning off, they'll toast up nicely. And then using my glove, I just massage it all together.
And can I ask, what does the sugar do?
So the sugars adds kind of sweetness and balance. Everything that we kind of try and do in kitchens, it's always about balancing acidity, saltiness and sugar.
Okay.
And trying to create the umami kick that you get from like MSG or eating Pringles or Parmesan, that perfect balanced flavour.
Yeah.
And what it does is it fills your mouth with saliva as you're eating it. You're going, oh my God, this is so Moorish, it's so delicious. You make it addictive, pretty much. But just be careful when you are browning off meat like steaks and stuff. Don't put too much sugar because the sugar will burn before the meat browns and you just get that bitter taste.
So what was your measurement in there? Just half a teaspoon?
Thereabouts.
Just a little?
Yeah.
Country measure.
Tablespoon.
I don't even have oil in the pan because I don't need it. There's oil actually already in the meat.
Okay.
Pan is screaming hot, and just add your lamb in, or if it's chicken or whatever you decide to use. But this time of the year, lamb is phenomenal. It's in season, and it's just great quality. Every butcher shop you walk into, like they've loads of different varieties of lamb cuts.
The smell has been amazing. You've been
Now,
tempting us all morning with this.
This is one of the kind of recipes that turn your X-Flare on or your extraction fan on as hot as you can.
Yeah.
You're getting smoked out of it there. I can see it.
So we're cooking this on high heat.
Incredibly high heat,
get the
almost setting
results.
off your fire alarm high heat. So open the doors, open the windows, get that really nice brown seal on. That's very important. You get that dark, crispy kind of colour on the outside of it. Like you can see the one I prepared earlier.
Yeah.
It's so dark and charred, and you instantly start to go, oh, I'm getting hungry now looking at this.
Yeah.
While that's sealing away, we're going to make our hummus, right?
Okay.
I just use some store-bought hummus, popped it into the bowl here with loads of chopped parsley from the garden, and it's going to mix all that parsley into the hummus and just make a parsley hummus.
Lovely.
As simple as that.
Parsley, it's growing like madness at the minute.
It's crazy. I culled mine last night and it's still minted. Huge.
It's a good excuse to literally use all the parsley you have in your garden. Just invite a bunch of people over and have a bowl of hummus.
That sounds like a good party there, catch you. Let's have it. Could you come over with some hummus there and a few cans?
A couple of tortilla crisps and some.
So I just spread that across the plate like that then. Same with like rosemary, coriander, all that kind of stuff. Mint. Like if your mint takes off, just have a mojito party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it.
And mint is taken over as well.
It's better than hummus. Mojito party.
See that lovely brown colour we're starting to get in it now? Once you get that, you can take your veggies and you can pop them back in.
Lovely.
Okay, so now the veggies are getting the exact seasoning that was all
And they're going to toss it together and everything, so it all comes together. You can taste it. If you think it needs more lemon, just pop a little bit more lemon juice. And I always run the lemon juice through my hands like that so I catch the seeds.
Ah, clever. I'm forever losing the seeds.
Yeah.
Or you bite into a seed and you take a chip of your tooth.
Yeah.
Piece your tooth. Right, season it with salt and pepper and that's it. Then there's a lovely little simple dressing. I have some more chopped parsley. You can see when I was writing this recipe.
You had some parsley to use.
I was like, you're going into that recipe, I'm getting rid of you. Some chopped garlic is inside there as well. And there's already some lemon juice inside there. Then olive oil. And there's already a pinch of sugar in there as well, just to add some sweetness. And that's a lovely parsley dressing, really simple, really easy. You can pop that into an old jam jar, and that lasts in the fridge for 3 to 4 days.
Okay.
You can dump it on toast or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We've about a minute left, so go on, serve us up some. I'm dying to try
So
this.
here's the one that I prepared earlier. Look at it all nice and charred and crispy. I'm just taking up all this flavour off the bottom of the pan.
Lovely.
And it's going to scoop it out onto the hummus, into that kind of little well that I created in the centre. So I created like a little volcano of hummus. Like we used to do years ago with
the beans and mashed potato.
Beans and mashed potato.
I'm glad it wasn't just me. It's a country thing, isn't it? It's like you look disgusting. Shocked.
And the cheapest, worst sausages in the world.
Oh yeah,
Dumped
cut
on
up
top.
into the Frankfurters, all chopped up.
Oh,
sorry,
they were
sorry,
great.
ma'am.
Yeah, it was lovely, ma'am. I take it all back.
Then the parsley sauce goes over like that.
And now, let's say you made the stir fry. Like, would it freeze well if you wanted to bulk?
Class meal prep.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Get your little lunch boxes, fill it up.
Sure, I'll give that
it
to you.
goes
Oh, you're
phenomenal well
Thank
with
you very
rice.
much.
And Joe, to be classed that is a big chunky slice of sourdough that's char grilled
lovely.
in the pan. And then you can spread the lamb and the
I'm
hummus onto the
excited
bread.
to eat it.
See, I always kind of keep my lamb like medium rare-ish, medium. But you can always just keep it cooking away in the pan until you're happy with the cooking at home. You know, a lot of people don't like red meat, so I won't
This
judge.
is gorgeous.
I burnt the mouth off myself, but other than that, it's absolutely amazing. Oh, there's a lovely heat.
It's spicy.
There's a
the
lovely
hummus
like
will start cooling
aftertaste.
it down.
Oh, that's
Jack, you've
absolutely
taken me
gorgeous.
straight to Morocco.
There you go now. You're on holidays, don't need to go.
I'm on my holiday
Morocco
box.
and Cork. There's 2
Alan
holidays
takes enough holidays for all of us, so look, you might as well just stay here and cook the food where he is.
Jack, thanks for bringing us
No
to
problem.
Morocco. Bring us on our holidays without leaving the studio. Thanks a million. That recipe is up on the website. Still to come, Derek is visiting the Kingdom ahead of Kerry's crash with Dublin in the All-Ireland football final this weekend.
See you for that right after this break.
Perfect coffee every time. Tassimo sponsors cookery on Ireland AM.
Welcome back. Time now to check in with our roving reporter, Derek. How are you?
Hi, Derek.
Yes, good morning to you. Welcome down here to Dr. Croak's GA in Killarney, County Kerry. There's big excitement building in the run-up to our Ireland football final Sunday. We're joined now by former Kerry footballer Owen Brosnan, as well as Kerry All-Star Cayley Cronin. And we're going to start with you, Owen. Kerry, can they make it 2 in a row?
I'd be hopeful, though. They have a fantastic team. All the hard work is done now, and they're all looking forward to Sunday.
The championship. It was a tough ride for Kerry over the last couple of months.
It was. I suppose it was a new format, obviously, with the group stages. It really only got going, really, at the group stages, and we lost to Mayo. Obviously, there was a lot of worries and concerns down here, but they've rebounded brilliantly. They've fantastic performance against Louth, brilliant performance against Tyrone, and a real tough, they dug it out against Derry.
It was a tough match against Derry, and they were into the 51st minute. They were 1-12 each. That save was a cracker of a save, wasn't it?
It was. It could have been in the end of it. Things weren't looking well at the time. Shane Ryan pulled off a fantastic save.
How are Kerry now fixed? I suppose Kerry haven't beat Dublin Since 1985. It's hard to believe, Owen.
It is. It's hard to believe. I suppose, yeah, the last 10 years, obviously, they've lost a few finals to Dublin. Before that, there hadn't been any. But like that, you have to give credit to that Dublin team, and there's still a few of them hanging around for Sunday.
I mean, you're talking 38 years. They haven't beat the Dubs. It's a long, long time.
It is, hopefully.
A bit of a famine down here in Kerry.
Hopefully we'll correct that on Sunday.
There's a major, a lot of players, 4 players in fact, from the club taking part this weekend. It's a big one for the club.
It is. We're very proud of the 4 lads. Like, they would have started off with, as young people here, who, being coached and whatnot, and to reach, I suppose, the big stage now on Sunday. It just shows all the hard work that was put in by themselves, but by the coaches here within the club as well.
Jack O'Connor, a bit of pressure on him now to deliver.
Jack has been there and done that, really. He started in 04 with the senior management, has won plenty of All-Irelands. He's come back obviously this year, and he even said he's probably, his own words, he's mellowed a little bit, so I'm sure he's enjoying it as opposed to putting himself under pressure, but he'll be expecting a big performance.
Injury worries, Owen, how are we looking?
I haven't heard anything negative, really. Like, they seem to have everyone fit at this stage, which shows, I suppose, the credit to the medical team to get everyone fit and ready for the big day.
A big day. Kaylee, you are on the ladies football team as well. Kerry doing pretty well at the moment.
We are, yeah, we're chipping away now. We're happy out. Looking forward to an Ireland semi-final now this Saturday.
This Saturday down in Thurles Tip.
Down in Thurles, yeah. Double header. So
yeah. You're taking on Mayo on that.
We are indeed, yeah. We've met them already this year in the league, and we also actually met them last year's semi-final as well. We got the better of them in both of those, but no doubt this will be a tough task.
And then on the other side, then we have Cork and Dublin.
Yeah. So Cork and Dublin, 2 of the old foes. We've played them both this year. Had good luck against one and not so good luck against another. But we can't look past Saturday ourselves, so we won't be looking.
So we're potentially looking at a Dublin-Kerry clash in the women as well.
You could be. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. You're GA All-Star as well. You were born and bred in this club. This is where it all started for you.
Yeah, it was indeed. Yeah, I was one of those not so long ago. So yeah, look, it was a massive honour, of course. A couple of the boys as well got one last year as well. But just looking forward now, I suppose, to Saturday.
PwC player at the moment back in April as well. I mean, you've good calibre behind you.
There's 2 games in here to go off of now. But look, we won't say no to them. But hopefully now get an all-team award sometime soon instead of all the individual ones.
Yeah, exactly. And you were talking about the grassroots, because this is where it all starts. You know, potentially here behind us, we have a future All-Star. We have an All-Ireland medalist.
100%, yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed, boys and girls, both of them. The club here has been phenomenal through the years of bringing players through. We've a good history of it, thanks be to God, so long may it last.
The facilities here, I'm looking behind us, we have a great stadium here. How many can that hold?
1,200.
We've got 2 dugouts, we've got a fantastic clubhouse. I mean, great work done by the local community to bring it to this level.
There is great work done by the club, and obviously there's a lot of hard work and fundraising goes into it, but we're very proud of our facilities.
And we've all the mums and dads, we have the coaches here this morning. We even have a little taster of drizzle cake as
well. That's what it's all about. That's the club. That's what the club is all about.
For the final on Sunday, what are we talking score-wise? Like, what are you hoping for Kerry?
I hope Kerry by 2 be my prediction.
Kerry by 2. All right, okay. What do you think, guys? Kerry by 2?
Yeah!
All right, well, I believe we're going to get you into goals and we're going to take a couple of shots at you. 3-time All-Ireland winner, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so coach is going to throw me a ball. Can we have a couple of cheers here, guys? All right, here we go. You ready, so Owen? 3, 2, 1. Oh, there's one! Oh, come on, Limerick. Here we go. Right, second one. I'm going to go for that corner, yeah? That's a wise. That's a wise. All right. This is for Dublin now, right? Oh, it's Kerry for the win at the weekend. Come here. Have you got tickets, by the way? Have you got tickets?
I don't at the minute. I was having a look there from that now and see.
I think there's a draw. There's a draw underway later on tonight. So you might. Have you got tickets sorted on?
I have.
You do. All right. Okay. Well, hopefully, who's going to win at the weekend, lads? Up the kingdom. Back to the studio.
Did you see the little one running away? She was like, "Get me my man."
Get me away.
No better man. How are you, lads? Do you have any tickets? He'll sort you out. He'll be outside Crow Park on Sunday. Derek, thank you so much. He has travelled to all parts of Ireland for the All-Ireland for us, and he has been so good. So
by the end of the week, he's going to be an absolute pro.
He's going to be a pro. He's doing well.
Yeah.
He's doing well.
Just saying, they didn't save one for the Dubs, you know. So is that a sign for the weekend?
I knew he was going to pick up on that, the Waterford man. Now, on the way after 9, we're going to a different sport. Munster rugby star and professional messer Simon Zebo talks World Cup chances and TikTok talents.
Yeah, we're going down under as well to preview the women's next match against Canada.
Yeah. Plus, a deep dive into the country's swinging culture. Join us right after this break.
She's been into
Can't wait.
Now he's an international rugby star and the first player in history to reach half a century of tries for Munster, which, like, in the history of Munster, is unreal.
It's unreal. I think he's up to about 70 now. Here to chat rugby, rapping and roasting his teammates. It's Cork's own Simon Zebo. Good morning.
Morning, guys. How are you? Very
it's
good.
lovely to chat to you this morning because you're such a Munster legend. And as we mentioned, half a century of tries.
And well beyond that now.
Are you up at 70 now?
Yeah, 70 odd now, yeah.
Reaching that landmark. Like, you just kind of, can we plaster my picture everywhere in Thomond Park? That's unbelievable.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very kind.
Is it something that when you're younger, you set yourself? Obviously, you know, we see now with kickers, they're like, I want to get to this amount of points. Are you like, I'm going to keep on going?
For sure, yeah. Scoring tries is, you know, I'm having my most fun when I'm on the pitch scoring tries and, you know, trying to express myself. Injuries and stuff over the past little while have made that a bit harder, but, you know, slowly getting back to it. And, yeah, since I was a little boy, scoring tries for Munster was the priority, something I always wanted to do. So to be able to do it now is a blessing. So
and impressive again, given you spent so much time in France too. So that's what I want to get the inside knowledge now from you ahead of the World Cup. So, like, where do you see it? Ireland and France have been number one, number two, you know, in the world standings. Do the French have this sort of innate advantage over us with the jouet stuff?
Not necessarily. I think we both play completely different styles of rugby. Ireland is, you know, a little bit more structured. The French a little bit more off the cuff. They have a lot of kind of individual talent, and our huge strength is the kind of collective. So France having the home World Cup in Paris, or in France rather, will be a challenge. But we're the number one team in Ireland, or in the world, so no reason why not.
But see, this is what's in, because you've been involved in this build-up before, and Ireland they've gone as huge favourites, and then the quarterfinals happen.
Yeah.
So under Joe Schmidt, I think teams around the world were starting to guess how we were going to play. They'd read our game, right? Under Andy Farrell, do you think that there's a few more surprises that were a little bit more expansive? And what do we need to do to break this quarterfinal curse?
I think it's just very much more of the same, and probably not allow the pressure to kind of get to us, because going into a World Cup for the first time as the number one ranked team, that's going to bring its own pressures.
Yeah.
But I think the way we're going about playing the game, we're playing, as you said, with such an expansive mindset. It's I think Ireland traditionally have been one way or the other, and now we're able to mix our game really, really well, and we can, you know, slog it out with the best of them, but actually play really nice rugby at the same time as well. So
what's Andy Farrell doing differently to Joe Schmidt?
I wouldn't say it.
Oh, the politician inside.
Here we go now.
He's just going,
Joe's way worked as well, and Joe was incredibly successful. Andy is just a different style of rugby. It's probably just that more expansive and a little bit more positive, I suppose. He wants to keep the ball in hand and use his fitness as a weapon, and, you know, tire teams out and you know, make them defend as opposed to us defending, because that's the hardest part of rugby. So.
And of course, the one thing that we want to see, I suppose, at the World Cup is not the stop-start form of play. You know, the way technology is so involved nowadays, and we want to have this free and expansive, because we need to see referees kind of letting people play, right?
Yeah.
Don't we? Like, that's because it can be hard to get into it when it gets stop-start.
Exactly, and that's what the crowd are baying for over in France. You know, they're very, very passionate about their rugby, so I think this will probably be the highest World Cup in terms of game in play minutes, you know. So it's going to be very, very exciting, and I've no doubt Ireland will get past that quarter-final for sure.
But, like, ironically, it's probably the toughest quarter-final draw we could face. Is it New Zealand or France? Is that the options? But most likely
to get through. Yeah, but if you want to win the World Cup, you have to beat the best, and you're going to meet them at some stage down the road. So having them in the quarter-final, either or, will be a huge test, yes, but having said that, if we can get through one of those, then that will bode very well for us.
And I'd just like to celebrate for 1 second, because we're sitting here and, you know, we're kind of looking at the Ireland team. There's so many Leinster players on it. But the team that got some silverware this season is Munster.
Correct.
Winning the URC and having that really tough 3 weeks in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like getting home to Thomond Park, that homecoming, Simon. It was fantastic.
Incredible. Yeah. And yeah, the final that we had down in South Africa, you could see the support that we had. And that carried on all the way through the season. And everybody in the organisation felt incredibly, you know, tight, a really strong bond. But I think this year especially was kind of the first year in a while that bond was there with the supporters as well, and very, very happy that we got over the line at the end, and you could see the celebrations and the homecoming, as you said, it was incredible.
It did feel like that Munster roar was back, and we really have been waiting for that for a while, and you gave that. But now you've got something. Your fans can hold you accountable in Thomond Park through technology. What's going on
Thankfully,
here?
it's not in Thomond Park. It's just in the Aviva.
Leave us alone in Thomond Park.
Yeah, but Vodafone are launching the new 5G app, you know, for stadiums where you go to the Aviva Stadium, you go and watch some of the Irish warm-up games, and you'll be able to get a lot closer to the game. All the stats you'll have, all the live feed will be hopping. So
you're a big NBA fan, right? So is this kind of like that League Pass app where you can see in the game, here's how many carries you've had, here's
exactly.
your tackles.
You're getting all the stats live straight away to your phone, 5G. So it's top quality, and it'll give, I suppose, people maybe not with the best view or understanding of a game, they'll have another way of looking at the game and having different information for them at hand.
So that's great. Simon, you missed that tackle. Look, I just said it here. It said it here.
Not in
like you would
Park,
ever do something. Like you would ever do something like that.
Exactly.
With the wonderful scenes that we saw in Thomond Park this year, and it was so good to bring that back. There's also been an awful lot of sadness, as we saw at the Under-20s World Cup, and this is Greg Oliver and his sad passing. How is everyone doing? Because he seemed to be a much beloved figure in Munster. Behind the scenes.
Yeah, that was incredibly tough. You know, Greg would have been one of the most lovable characters I think I've ever met. Genuinely, and I say that with all honesty. I think he had a close relationship with every single person in the building that would have came across him. You know, such a positive man, and such an unfortunate incident to take his life so soon. But you know, it hasn't been something that we've kind of pushed away. It's been at the forefront of everybody's mind. We've been, you know, open and honest about it. You know, people speaking to each other and talking, because that was our second coach now in the last 12 months that we've lost. So it's been a tough time. But knowing Greg, I don't think he would want us to dwell on it too much in a sad sense, and just move on and try and remember as positively as we can. So.
And just having the team around, especially like you say, you've dealt with tragedy before a number of times. And presumably that becomes sort of a support blanket nearly.
Yeah, big time, but it's probably a support blanket we don't want to have, because we keep losing coaches. But yeah, it was just an incredibly difficult time, a tough time. His family, such a nice family. Yeah, it's just such a tragic, sad event, and yeah, it hit everybody really, really hard.
Because you are in pre-season already, and this is going to be an incredibly long pre-season, because we've got the World Cup, right?
Absolutely.
You enjoying that, are you?
No.
I really is not. I'm a bit worried about poor Craig Casey.
Oh, yeah.
Is it? Because one of the nicest little fellas that you've ever seen on the Munster team is Trojan. He's unbelievable, pocket rocket. You have a little bit of fun with him, Simon. Let's take a look at what Simon Zebo does to poor Craig at Munster training all of the time.
Do ba 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 do boo do a boo ba do ba do boo boo ba do a do ba do ba do a do ba do ba do 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 a do ba do ba do.
We've lost Peter, our cameraman.
Oh, my goodness.
He's gone. I'm sorry. I can watch the two of you all day long. He's clearly up for it.
Yeah. Oh, he is. Yeah. I get a hard time all the time about this. People think I just have it in for Craig, but no. Craig might see a video and we might get an idea together. No, but I tell Craig, oh, we wanted to shoot this video, and he'd be like, yeah, doing his hair, trying to look good, he knows, you know. But he's a great sport. He's a fantastic player, but a great fella off the pitch. And that sums up the bond, I suppose, we have in Munster. You know, everybody's super close, and you don't mind getting the mick taken out of you a little bit.
Yeah. You have a lot of fun on the TikTok.
Exactly.
You're doing a bit of rapping as well.
A little bit.
What's your go-to?
Jay-Z, a bit of Nas, old school. Yeah, I like all types of rap and hip-hop, really. Anything.
Go on, you give us a few bars.
Nice try. I don't freestyle, sorry.
What? You don't freestyle. We saw you at your wedding with Hermitage Green.
Oh,
there was videos up around that. You had a good time there, didn't you?
Yes, I don't remember too much of that now.
Yeah, because it's so like you have a great time with your kids as well.
Big time. Yeah.
Like you really do. Like you've got a team.
Yes, full team.
Full team.
Pretty much.
And your wife is a wonderful woman, putting up with the antics that you like to cause in the house.
Big time. Yeah, that's the crack that you see us having a training is almost brought home to the house. You know, the kids are very much of that nature to just have trouble or cause trouble, have that little bit of devilment, and they just want to have a bit of crack.
Yeah,
So
it's great to see some of the dances as well you have up. You're obviously having great crack.
Yes, yes, non-stop. That's it.
So good.
Smiling.
Massive hurling man as well, because that's where it all started for you, of course. You were a huge Cork hurler. We've got the Camogie Cork taking on Waterford. In the
First final in
finals
78
of the
years.
All-Ireland.
I think we'll agree to disagree.
Very confident.
He's feeling very
confident.
Very. All right, okay, I see how it is.
Zebo, it has been a pleasure. I know you're going to be doing
so
a bit of chatting for the World Cup as well, and you're really enjoying it's been a pleasure watching you on commentary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Thanks a
joining us
million.
this
Cheers.
morning.
Appreciate it.
Craig Casey, please come in and can we do that live, just to see what's happening. Later on this hour, we delve into the growing world of swinging and sex parties. Welcome to Ireland AM.
But up next, we're heading down under to meet the supporters cheering on our girls in green.
Talk to you in a minute. Now, anticipation is building once again as Ireland prepare to face Canada in their second game of the World Cup later on today.
And of course, the girls in green have been well represented on the streets of Oz.
Come on, yeah, we're crossing live to news reporter Paul Quinn now, who's in PJ O'Brien's pub in Sydney this morning. How's it going over there, Paul?
Hi guys, how are you? Look, I can't even hear myself think here in PJ O'Brien's. We're in the centre of Sydney City. The crowds are starting to build here. There's still a couple of hours to go before kick-off, but certainly there's a great atmosphere here in PJ O'Brien's. Of course, one of the Irish bars that do really well here in Sydney. Now, not all of the fans that would have travelled over from Ireland are actually heading over to Perth, given the costs, given the distances involved. It's even in a different time zone. Perth is a couple of hours behind Sydney, so you'll have the expats living here in Sydney popping in, and you'll also have some of those who've travelled over from Ireland, some of those 4,000 people. Now, Fergal Macaulay is the general manager here in PJ's. I mean, the place is buzzing already, and we've still a couple of hours to go. What was the build-up like in the last couple of weeks?
Oh, it's been fantastic. The amount of people, I'm so really surprised, the amount of people that came over from home. Last week in Sydney was like a sea of green. Honestly, it was a great build-up, and everyone was in great form, and I think the girls done really well, you know. So, I mean, we're all pumped for the night's game.
What was the match like last week? What was the atmosphere like here?
Honestly, it was like a mini St. Patrick's Day here. People were coming in from early morning, getting the breakfast, getting the lunch in them, and then there were a lot of people going out to the game, and then even more coming out after work, and the place was full house.
I know you have a Canadian chef, don't you? So what's the rivalry been like over the last couple of years?
Oh yeah, he's been building up his girls all week. So there's a few inside wagers with the Irish staff. So he's either going to be very rich tomorrow or he's going to be very poor.
We left Sydney 7 years ago and moved back home. What's the Irish community like at the minute? Because obviously with COVID, nobody could travel. But it just seems to me, when walking down the streets, there's just Irish accents everywhere.
Honestly, I mean, there's always been a good Irish community. Even during COVID, we all sort of stuck together and that. But since COVID, there's been just so many people, the droves, everyone's coming back out again. And there's so many new faces. It's great. Every weekend we meet new people from home, and it's super, it's really, really good atmosphere. Everyone just comes to PJ's and they just want to be just like home and have a good night, you know. So
obviously this is a very important game for us today. We either have to get a win or a draw. What's your own prediction?
Well, I think we're good enough to get at least a draw here. You know, if we get a win, then let's go all the way to the quarterfinals, and then whatever happens after that. But we're definitely good enough to get a draw at least tonight. So I think so.
Hopefully your Canadian chef can't hear you. He's too busy out the back. But that's it. There is a couple of hours to go before kick-off here in Sydney. No doubt it's going to be an amazing night. The capacity at the stadium in Perth is just over 20,000 compared to almost 80,000 here in Sydney last week. But no doubt those Irish fans will be just as loud and just as proud.
Paul, thank you so much for that. And just over Paul's shoulder, you can see a Santa hat, because clearly they're doing Christmas in July in Australia at the minute. And that is PJ O'Brien's pub. So for anyone who has been, any Irish person who's been to Sydney, you've been to PJ O'Brien's.
Right.
It's the
what
crack.
an atmosphere, like, yeah.
Big pub,
Amazing.
absolutely brilliant. So thank you for that, Paul, and best of luck to the girls at 1 o'clock today.
I love how it's been described. It's not quite a must-win, but it's a must-not lose.
Must not lose.
There's a fine gap in that detail.
Very political, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Now,
it.
touching on the floods of texts you guys have sent, we were talking about baby presents. We've got a text in from Teresa on the subject of baby showers. When I was in my 20s, I lived and worked in the hospitality sector in New York. The reason behind the baby showers is that in that country was because it costs so much to have the baby, not like here where maternity services are free. Oh.
Well, yeah, but I suppose you've chosen to have the baby, but also we do have healthcare in this country, so why is it come over here? Do you know what I mean? That's what I was just wondering. Elaine said, for my gender reveal, I asked people to bring nappies if they thought it was a boy and wipes if they thought it was a girl.
That's a good one. I like that.
It helped with the cost after the baby, plus not as expensive on people. That is very good.
I like that.
Because you're covered in both ways.
Yeah.
Elaine, that's a good one. That's a very, very, very good one.
Very clever. We like that. We've also been getting texts in about the things you got for your communion. This is on the back of you saying you got a cow.
Got a cow for my
Which I'm still getting over, frankly.
What was your cow's name?
Her name was Sinead.
Sinead.
Because I always wanted to be called Sinead when I was young. I love my name now, but because I couldn't have that opportunity, I said, you know what? I'm going to name my cow Sinead.
Living vicariously through your cow is a new one on me, I have to say. But people have been getting in to try and top you. Clodagh has texted in saying, my granddad's a farmer, and for my communion, I got a small plot of land. At the time, I got no presents from my grandparents, and when the rest of my friends were getting fivers, I was jealous, but now I'm blessed with that present. What is a small plot of land?
I mean, bless you are. Like, what are there businesses on the land? How many houses have you got on the land? I need to know, Clodagh.
Clodagh is now a developer.
Are we on your land? Like, Clodagh, do we work on your land? That is the best present ever.
Could you imagine?
Has it beat Sinead?
Absolutely.
She's
Can you
Sinead
imagine being like, oh, my friends have fiver notes, and like, oh, land.
So, now,
oh.
Awful as a 7-year-old.
Thank you so much for all of your messages today. We really do appreciate it.
Now, coming up next, we uncover the secret world of swinging and sex parties.
Good morning. You're with Ireland AM. This is just to let you know, the perfect time. We want to give you that 3-minute warning to get any small ears that might be listening. Maybe they want to go to the back garden to play. Maybe they want to put some headphones
plot of
on.
land, maybe.
If they've got a plot of land, they could build a house. So, maybe push them aside. We'll talk to you very shortly. Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, the last time our next guest was on, she mentioned something as she was leaving the studio, and we said, we want to talk about that. Why didn't you say it on air? So we want to give a warning right now. This segment will contain topics of a sexual nature. So if there are children near the telly, maybe give them the iPad and some headphones and everything will be grand. That we're warning you. You might want them to hear this.
Yeah, because we are going to be exploring Ireland's hidden sex subcultures. So joining us now is sex expert and host of the Glow West podcast. It's Dr. Caroline West.
Good morning.
Very welcome. Now, when we talk about swinging parties, it's something that a lot of us would associate with the 70s, the bowls, dropping your keys in there. But is it something that has just always been around since the beginning of time?
Pretty much. Humans like sex and they like to explore, and this is just one way that they can do it. So, some of the old myths were if you had an upside down pineapple in your house or if you had pampas grass outside your house, you're identified as a swinger. So you might need to replant your garden.
My granny had that outside her house now. I think about it. What's the daisy?
I'm questioning everything.
There you go. So people find ways to, connect with other people. And if you think about Irish society, back in the day, you were forced to get married really young. You had a million kids and sex was nothing about pleasure. It was all about procreation. And then now, those people are finding themselves in a much more permissive society. And maybe they're going, the kids have all left the nest. Let's kind of explore, let's see where we're going. And happy days to them. They're finding their own path and their own pleasure. And it's always a good thing.
Because last time you were here, we were talking about people forming relationships with AI, and you just kind of dropped this tidbit as you were leaving the studio about, sure, loads goes on in Ireland. Is this pervasive in Irish society and just something that we don't talk about?
Spread. You scratch the surface. There's swingers parties, there's kink parties, there's dogging, there's you name it. It's going on in Irish society.
And anyone who's watching right now going, well, not where I live. Yes.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. There are websites with thousands of members. There's organised parties. There's WhatsApp groups. There's neighbours bumping into other neighbours in parties. So it's a small world, but people are out there.
I know, have you heard any stories? I mean, because Ireland is such a small country. Like, you're bound to bump into someone, you know?
Yeah.
That's the
You go to
fear.
the middle of China and you'll meet an Irish person,
Yeah.
you know? So you go to a swingers party, you probably meet someone. I have heard of someone travelling from Sligo to Dublin and they met their neighbour. So they thought they were safe travelling all that way and then their neighbour was there. Did also hear of someone else, a younger girl who was in a compromising position, shall we say, and she looked up and saw her uncle.
No.
So I can imagine that's an awkward conversation around the Sunday dinner table.
Oh my God.
But they're both there for the same reason. So, you know, you have to kind of just accept it's awkward and weird and
Okay, well, I have a question about how this all goes down, because I do find it fascinating and it's great that people are exploring, but is it safe? Like, is on the website, you mentioned there's many swinger websites, is there like certain boundaries that you have to make sure you're all checked? Have you gotten an STI test in the last 6 weeks, 6 months? Like, is there any sort of like boundaries?
I think with any kind of sexual activity, regardless if it's monogamous or multiple partners or whatever, we're not as good as we should be when it comes to sexual health. So the good news is you can get free tests from SH24. You can get them sent to your house, so that's fantastic. But everyone, regardless of what you're doing, should be, if you're sexually active, you should be getting tested. You know, it's the same thing. But it comes down to you and your partner. So setting those boundaries of, you know, what gender are we going to go with? Can they touch the two of you? What if they call you honey or baby or something? Is that going to be a trigger thing? Or, you know, do you go into a same room or do you go into separate rooms? There's all these little levels that you have to consider.
Okay, so you have to be comfortable with your partner if you are going in as a couple. But let's talk about some of the terminology and what happens at some of these parties. So there's a unicorn in the swinging community. What does that mean?
So that is usually a single female who would like to partner with like maybe couples or something. So single men are not called unicorns because they're in high abundance everywhere and they're up for most things a lot of the time.
Do they have a name, the ones that are all over the shop?
Some people might say pests, but you know, because they can be a little bit kind of persistent, I suppose.
Okay.
Whereas single women, you know, might be a bit gentler and a bit more softer, maybe.
And harder to find?
Harder to find,
Elusive.
yeah.
And now, when you want to bring this to your partner, how would you recommend couples in Ireland go about it? Because you do have to have that sort of emotional availability when it comes to sex, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sex is not just physical. That's literally the 10% of it. It's all about the emotions and how, if you bring someone else into your relationship, what are you doing to that relationship? Is it going to be a good thing or a bad thing? So talk to your partner and say what your expectations are, the reasons why you want to do it. Because if someone just sprang that on you, you might think, God, do they not love me anymore? Am I not enough for them? Or, you know, do they want an end to the marriage? You know, so all those assumptions can run through our head when we don't have accurate information. So being honest and saying, this is what I'd like to do, and I want to do it with you, and I want to have this experience with you by my side. So, you know, if both partners aren't into it, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. So if you're going along with something to keep someone else happy, it doesn't work, you know.
So say it's something, I'm assuming that these days, getting into a relationship, it might be something you've discussed beforehand.
Yeah.
But say there's someone who's in a relationship, like, have you heard of situations where people have been in a relationship for 15 years, the kids are a little bit older, and someone has said, I need a little bit more in my life, but I don't want to break up with my partner?
Absolutely.
Can that be a situation?
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of people might find that they'll go and have affairs and other people want to go swinging. It's basically comes down to, I want to explore, you know, and you know, you want to spice up a relationship, but adding other humans into that can be a recipe for disaster, because they're not just toys, they're actual humans with their own emotions and complications and stuff as well. So it's all about communication and consent are like the key to any kind of conversation around this. But yeah, it's just talking and being honest, you know. It's like a lot of people aren't fit for the monogamous world, and that's okay, you know. Whereas that was the only option given to us, you know, back in the day. And it doesn't work for everyone. And we see a rise in open relationships all over Ireland at the time, from every age going.
And let's touch on another subculture, that is jogging. Explain what is
Katia,
jogging?
when she got this job, has been waiting to say that sentence. for a year. So let's talk about
Let's talk
papers in our
about
hands.
A sentence you don't hear every day. So dogging is...
You can't help it.
But this is sex is fun and
It
silly.
is
You know,
fun.
like you're meant to have a laugh. But
Yeah.
porn is
Exactly.
very serious all the time. It's like real life sex is funny
Yeah.
and silly. So dogging is when you have sex in a car. People keep asking me if I talk about it, does that mean you do it? And my husband's almost 6 foot and I have a Fiat 500. Like he can barely fit into it as it is. So, you know, that's a different option. But people will go and drive to certain areas and they will have sex in their car, or they will have little codes to let other people know that they can join in and they can get into their car, not in a Fiat 500.
No, probably not a good idea. There are, because you mentioned this and then I went down a rabbit hole. No one could look at my search history. So there are signals, right, to do with windows is one.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So if you have your window closed, that kind of means that someone can come up and watch, but they can't join in. So you
Gotcha.
have the barrier. But if your window is down, that means that they can join in. So they can put a hand through or whatever body part they're going to put through the window. And if you have the door open, that means that they can get into the car with you. So
They
that's
can
why
take part.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
fascinated by how this like language kind of comes up together. And if you flash your lights a certain few times, it might mean, oh, we're here, we're interested. Because you don't want to go up to someone and they're just randomly sitting in their car and they're like, what are you talking about?
And are these people pre-approved?
No, so a lot of swinging...
I know the way she's like, do they have an Instagram blue tick?
I'm just like, do
don't
we know
think-
what they look like? Do you know how old they are?
But for some people, that's the appeal, that
Okay.
anonymous nature of you might never see them again.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, swinging in open relationships, there is the potential for feelings to develop and relationships to develop, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. Whereas dogging is usually, I want to say in and out, but it's no pun intended. But yeah, literally.
But as you said there, I'm assuming there have been situations where someone's just been pulled up on the road and they're just having a bit of a rest, they've taken a phone call at night time, something like that, and then next thing there's lights flashing and they're like, is it a UFO? Like, there is...
You might need to drive away.
Yeah, you
from
might
that.
need to drive
There
away.
are certain places, and you know, there is one in Dublin where people go to view the airplanes, but then also dogging. So that could
Sorry
get really
now,
confusing.
The airport road, the old airport road. You said this to me, and then of course went on to Reddit, and they're like, yeah, happens there all the time.
So you got to be really careful. You're not, you know, engaging the plane nerds with the dogging nerds.
Yes.
So it's like they're very separate.
Another one.
That Venn diagram.
I don't know if this is true or not, but did you say another one in Dublin was Bull Island as well? Is
that
another?
would any kind
We're
of
giving
beach
away all
kind of
the
area. Yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be 50 cars going to Bull Island after this now. But yeah, any kind of area that's a bit more secluded, and you know, you don't want people going near people who don't want to see this. And,
No.
you know, and if there's kids, you obviously definitely don't want to be around
It's a protected nature reserve.
Adults only.
But I do love how we can laugh about it and talk about it so openly. Like, do you think the stigma has been totally removed from these sexual activities now?
Not all the way, but I think we've come a long way. I mean, we're having this conversation now,
Yes.
and it's not sleazy. We're laughing about it. It's funny, and it's like, you know, more power to people if they find what works for them, you know. And I think Ireland has definitely opened up a lot more. Like, we have high memberships of like any kind of alternative sexuality website, kind of community, things like that. There's a lot going on out there, but we also have better sex education, so people can make decisions that work for them. So if they decide, oh, I'm into XYZ, whatever happens to be. If you're into like balloons, apparently people are into that too. Like, they know what they want, they know how to get it for themselves, they know how to communicate with themselves, and I think that's really positive. So if it
You'll
works
be on
for them,
6 minutes about balloons next time. She keeps dropping stuff at the very end of every time that she's on. If it's consensual and people are happy and it's legal.
yeah, and if they
Good
can
reading.
communicate with themselves and with each other.
Beautiful. It is a gorgeous thing. Caroline West, you
What a
are a
way to
sex
end the
educator.
show.
of
What a way to
course.
join the conversation.
And Caroline is host of the Glow West podcast, which is fabulously informative. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today.
Thank
we really
you for having me
appreciate it.
talking about
Make sure you
dogging.
check it out. And on that note, Sean has just joined us. We're running away with ourselves now. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be catching up with world champion, slightly different. Rashida Adekele is going to be here chatting with us.
And Derek is dancing himself fit on Dublin's north side.
That will
while Joe Shannon makes a protein ball in the kitchen. Protein balls.
Two balls. Oh, Lord. Plus, we've got your list of what to watch ahead of the weekend. We'll see you back on Monday.